Assalamu alaikum. Welcome to another episode of Islamic Learning with Masjid As-Sabur. I'm your host, Ahmad Hassan Ibn Julius Thibodeau, and this is my esteemed colleague and guest, Brother Khalid Mutaki from the Office of Violence Prevention. As we normally do, we'd like to open up with Al-Fatiha. Brother, if you care to join me.
Yes.
A'udhu billahi minash shaitanir rajim. Bismillahir rahmanir rahim. Alhamdulillahi rabbil alameen. Ar-Rahmanir Rahim. Maliki yawmiddin. Iyyaka na'budu wa iyyaka nasta'in. Ihdinas siratal mustaqim. Siratal ladina an'amta alayhim. Ghayril maghdubi alayhim waladdallin. Ameen. And that is, I seek refuge in Allah from the rejected Satan. In the name of Allah, the most gracious, most merciful. Praise be to Allah, Lord of the worlds, most gracious, most merciful, Master of the day of judgment. You alone we worship, and you alone we ask for help. Guide us along the straight path, the path of those whom you have favored, not those who earn your anger, nor those who go astray. Ameen. To my viewers, please forgive me when we use Islamic terms and I forget to give you the English. Only it's not in my heart. I sometimes I just forget. I forget that, everyone, all our viewers aren't necessarily Muslim. So forgive me for that, and I'll try to do better than that in moving forward in the future. Brother Khalid, Assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum assalam wa rahmatullah.
Alhamdulillah. Alhamdulillah means praise God. And many of you know that the greeting that we give often is peace and blessings from Allah. Brother, so you were able to stay back for the second taping. Thank you. I appreciate you for that. Shukran, which means thank you. Wanted to get back into a little more in depth of why it's so important to service this particular population when we're talking about what we call the 1%ers that are most difficult to serve, but are the most impacted by trauma. And you would think it would be obvious that you needed to get some services and some treatment to the people who are most impacted by trauma, but for whatever reason, and I know you could speak of, there's a number of reasons that may be fact and some may be opinion, as to why there's really not a great concern for getting services to this population.
It's a complex question, but I think so. First of all, our experience, just off the bat, is in Sacramento, 95% of the individuals that are coming into the program, as you know, which was amazing to me, being part of on the administrative side and the evaluation side of things. We're not connected to any service upon being enrolled in advanced peace. So from a public institution, from a private institution, or from a nonprofit community-based institution, or from a faith-based institution, they were not being serviced at all, point blank, period. So you're talking about, once again, the individuals who are the most traumatized by violence, the most inclined to use violence in the neighborhood, and the most likely to be targeted for violence. And these individuals are not being serviced by anybody.
Right.
So that's not a good recipe.
No, it's actually very sad.
So it's very sad, and what's happened and as part of this is there's a lot of money in this business. Before I get into the actual practical side of it, and you got people saying that they are servicing these individuals, but it's not trickling down. Not saying that they're not doing good work. They're doing good work and they're servicing needy populations, but not servicing those at the center, those that are actually driving the violence. And, to be fair, these are not individuals that are easily served.
Right, or want to be served.
Or want to be served. And I always we can go back to, I've taught to a lot of principals and teachers that are in education over the years. You can take a 4th or 5th grade class. And this is very politically incorrect to say, but I'm going to say it anyways. Because my elders and administrators have told me, they can tell you the two in the class who's going to have some problems if we don't get some services to these. Like, they're getting kicked out the class, they're fighting, they're bullying, they're taking people's lunch money. The teachers don't want them in the class, the principal don't want them at the school, and they're only in the 4th or the 5th grade.
Right.
So, there's always those one or two that just are not fitting in with that current structure and need some more tailored type approaches. But the problem is these individuals, these students, these kids continue to slip through the cracks of the school system, of the social service system. And then by the time we get them, they're shooters or they're identified as these violent individuals. And so now you got a situation where you may have either the individual that's not ready to receive services, and part of the team's job is to help them get ready to receive services. And then oftentimes, as you know, you may finally get a young person, a young man who is finally ready to receive counseling or anger management or drug treatment or faith-based services. And oftentimes, those institutions are not ready for them.
Right.
So you got a two-way situation where you're trying to work with the young people to get them ready for services, but then you show up, and I think we use the example of anger management class.
Right.
We could also use the example of a drug treatment class because you finally convinced me to stop smoking weed. I've been smoking weed every day for the last 6 years. And I'm finally saying, okay, this has been a barrier. I'm going to go ahead and try to get over this barrier. Told my mentor, I'm going to do this. He got me in a drug treatment class. He's been trying to talk me into go to this class for 6 months. I finally agreed. Class is tomorrow. What's the average person going to do before they go to that class? This is my last day before I go sober. I'm going to smoke some. You know what I mean? I'm going to light it up.
My last hit.
You know what I mean? And so you got, individuals that might show up to class a little bit under influence, say, well, you can't be here because you're under the influence.
So I guess it's safe to say that you need to understand this population. You need to have some mercy and some tolerance.
Yeah, and some cultural competence.
Okay, and some
So
cultural
I would call it
competence.
cultural competence. I think, you've hit it. Patience, humility. One of the things we learned about this work is not everybody can do it. Just because you went to prison, just because you got a background, you was the big shot in the neighborhood, triple OG, doesn't mean you can do this work. And that was the amazing thing, the learning curve for me. I'm not on the streets like the team is, but watching the team operate, watching us go through what we went through to build this team and this infrastructure is one of the qualities that makes an effective neighborhood change agent or street outreach worker. It's not how much prison time you did. It's not all that. That does give you some credentials and gives you some attention, but it really takes humility.
Definitely.
That is a quality that, once again, when we're putting the Islamic, lens on this thing.
Yes.
That can, and I know because so one of the things that's been interesting to me, going on a little bit of a tangent, is there's a lot of Muslims involved in this work of violence intervention.
Correct.
A lot of Muslims. I go to a lot of conferences throughout the country. You've been to quite a few, and you always see the Muslim brothers doing this work, and a lot of them been doing it, and sisters been doing it for years.
Right.
Everywhere I even got into it, and I'm on my 11th year, specifically working with violence prevention. So, and I think there is something about that because working on our character, it takes a lot of character to do this work.
Right.
And so, I think, working with this population, helping them get there, it does take some humility because, like I said, a lot of times they're not ready. They're going to say, hey, get out my face. I ain't with your program. I'm not with your services. I'll mess with you, but I don't need no services.
And that's one of the things I tell my team, that's who we're looking for. We're looking for the individual that, excuse my language here and excuse the gesture, but we're looking for the individual that's giving you the middle finger and telling you what you can do with your program. Because he's the person or she's the person that needs the program and the services the most. I was given a khutbah, I think, a couple of weeks ago, And I was talking about how Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala speaks to us in signs. And human beings, we're the only creation that can buck evolution. Like, we can say no. Like, a caterpillar doesn't say, I don't want to go into that cocoon. And I don't want to come out and emerge a butterfly with wings. Human beings, we can buck that. We can say, no, I'm not going into that cocoon. I'm cool on the ground. It might take me a little longer to get to where I'm going, but I don't want no wings. You know, to me, that makes me more exposed and more dangerous. You know, or exposed to dangers. You know, now the birds and the predators can see me if I'm all out there like that. So I'm cool. I'm gonna stay here in this larva stage, in this stage where I'm crawling on the ground, and life is so much more difficult for me because I don't want to evolve. And so, speaking to what you was talking about as in regards to the neighborhood change agents having to have those qualities of showing that I was once where you were, but I had to evolve. I couldn't buck evolution. I had to continue to grow in order to be here, to assist you, to live a better life for myself, and to be an example for people who have to come out of the same trials and tribulations that I faced. Growing up in the inner cities, in the ghettos, from the projects. It's like we already have so many obstacles, and you need wings. You need that set of wings in order to navigate through all the obstacles and all the systemic hurdles that are laid out for young people of color.
Yes, sir.
So with that being said, yes, you have to be able to be equipped. You have to have that humility for one. You have to be able to be in control of oneself. You know, you need that anger and management, that emotional intelligence. So most of the guys on our team, if they didn't already have the training, we made sure that they got the training. And I think that is one of the things that separates us from other organizations. When we do have this guy with street credibility, but he also has those social services and those cognitive skills where he can teach you conflict management. Because in many instances, our guys just need to know how to resolve a problem without resorting to violence.
Yeah, exactly.
Right, and also need assistance. We had one guy who was doing well, and I was explaining this to our city manager, Howard Chan, where we're talking about this guy's doing well, got a job, taking care of his children, and all of a sudden his car breaks down. It's like you can't just tell him to pull himself up by his bootstraps and, you know, do something. It's like, man, we need to help this guy get his car back on the road so he can continue his growth and development, because it's so difficult for us, and I'm saying us because I'm someone who came from that lifestyle, to pull away from this group of individuals whom I've identified as my new family, my surrogate family.
Yes, sir.
The things that I wasn't getting at home, I may not necessarily be getting them from the streets, but in my mind, I am. I'm getting the love that I'm not getting at home. I have the father figure now in the big homie, and he's not really telling me all the things that I need to be successful in life, but unfortunately, he is guiding me. Whether it's good guidance or bad guidance, you know, I guess we'll measure that on an individual basis. But in most cases, he's only teaching me what he has to offer. You can't give what you don't have.
Yes, sir.
And so he's teaching me the best way he can, and that's through crime, more than likely. I don't know what the percentage of that is. I don't want to say 90% of the time.
It's up there.
Yeah, it's up there. It's a very high percentage that this person is teaching me how to survive through criminal activity. And that's all that he knows, and that's what he's given to me. And so I'm willing now to put my life and my freedom in jeopardy every single day, routinely. And it gets to the point where it's no big deal. It's like Imam Michael Salam used to say, when you first take that puff, your body rejects it, you know, vehemently rejects it. You know, you're coughing, you're convulsive, rejects it. When you continue to give your body that poison, the next thing you know, it becomes accustomed to it, and now it actually needs it. So you go from a situation where your body rejects something that's bad to now you're accustomed to it, and now you're actually dependent upon it.
Yeah.
And it's pretty similar to the lifestyles. Like for most of us, we have such a difficult time pulling away from things that are harmful to us. We become our own worst enemies. And it's through learned behavior. And now we have to get to a point where we need to unlearn these things that are destroying us.
Yes.
First and foremost, we already know there are external enemies, but we want to get to a point where we can function where we're not our own worst enemies. We have to deal with the enemy within.
Yes.
And I just don't think, like you said, I think you said there's a cultural awareness.
Cultural competence.
Cultural competence. Let's speak towards that. Let's hear some more on what you describe as cultural competence.
Yeah, well, I mean, a lot of times it's referred to more like understanding specific ethnic cultures.
Okay.
Like if I'm going to serve the Asian community or the Russian community or the African American community, having some kind of understanding of the norms and the history and the practices and things within that culture. But as it relates to advanced peace, I would say having cultural competence with this particular population who has unique barriers of trauma, violence, and other issues, and that takes a tailored approach. Because like I said, a lot of times they don't want to, I mean, they can't. Like a teacher, going back to the original example, a teacher can't stop the whole class just to deal with this one kid. We get that. Okay. We get that. We understand that. However, we can't just keep dealing with this young fourth grader with punitive responses. Right. So all you get is suspension, detention, expulsion. And then by the time this kid is 7th or 8th grade, we wonder why he's acting the way he's acting.
Right. I get into a fight and I'm sent home for 3 days and I'm supposed to come back and understand why I can't lose my temper and sock someone.
Yeah. And while you're gone those 3 days, by the way, you done fell behind on class. And so, for example, we know that, so that's the correlation between the school to prison pipeline that a lot of people refer to, or the punitive aspects of our school system, and the prison system.
Right.
You know, we know that the prison system right up the street, Folsom, like 78% of those inmates are functionally illiterate. So if you was to give them a test, because normally to be functionally illiterate, you got to score at least 7.9.
Right.
Seventh grade, 9th month. You know what I mean? Then we consider you functionally literate. But 78% can't score that 7.9. So they're reading below a 7th grade reading level. And so there is this correlation between that. But once again, using that example, so instead of suspending him for 3 days, 4 days, 5 days, we would say refer them to a program like Advanced Peace.
Correct.
Where you have people that is culturally competent, that understands this young kid, what he's going through. Because he's not that way because he wants to be. There's something obviously going on. You know, once we dig into the story and we get these young men talking, or young women talking, young girls, realize dad might be in prison, mom has 5 other kids at the house, nothing to eat, and we're expecting this kid to come to school and be focused for 7 hours.
Right.
In 4th grade, going through all of that. So what we're saying, you know, part of cultural competence is all the trainings that you said. You know, having some of those trainings and trying to understand what the work of violence prevention looks like as it relates to all these other systems and social services providers who are supposed to be working with these kids and adults, but are not. Like we said, 95% of them disconnected from any social service institution. So that's part of the work of Advanced Peace. Is we talked about 6 components. One is social service navigation, helping them navigate those systems and institutions that are supposed to be serving them, but are not, and helping them take advantage of those resources that are out there. Because there's a lot of resources at the end of the day.
Right.
Millions of dollars that go into supposedly working with these populations.
And I'll say, for the most part, once you get them to a space where they have this relationship with the NCA and they understand that they finally have someone in their lives that understands them, because most of them, it's such a lonely space to be in.
Yes.
When you feel like you're misunderstood, you know, and these, and I know, you know, from your social services background, these things are linked to depression, you know, being isolated, you know, self-destructive behavior, lashing out, acting out, cries for help, right? All these different things just from simply being on that island alone. And then to come now into a space where you have someone that you can call anytime and you can talk to them about real things. And one thing they discover, I think, initially or at some point in time in the journey, they discover that I can talk to this person, I can be transparent with this person. Like I can talk to them about very serious issues. Like, you know, if you and me in the hood and you're my homeboy, I can't really tell you that, you know, I'm in love with this girl and you know, I really don't know how to approach
Can't
it.
be vulnerable.
I can't be vulnerable.
You gotta be hard.
I have to be hard.
Yeah.
And I also feel like coming from that, what you just said, where I feel the need to be hard and have that hardcore exterior, I kind of like willingly sacrifice some of my humanity in order, not just because I feel I'm afraid to be vulnerable, but it becomes a defense mechanism. Like I feel like this is the jungle. I have to have some sort of hardcore exterior so people won't notice that I have a weakness.
Yeah.
And they won't see these chinks in my armor. And so I'm always putting on a face. And I think people get that, but I think people don't care enough to spend the time or invest the time and the resources into getting this person into a space where they understand that this isn't going to be beneficial to them. At some point in time, you're going to have to deal with reality and the truth of the matter and be honest with yourself. Because to be vulnerable, have these vulnerabilities, I think you need to be able to be honest.
Yeah.
You know, one of the things about being mistrustful is that we become untrustworthy ourselves. So when you're untrustworthy yourself, it's very difficult for you to trust other people. Because now you have a base, you have a foundation, and it's like, well, if I would steal this guy's wallet, most certainly you would. Or if I would deal with this guy harshly and without mercy, then most certainly you would. And you can't tell me that you would. So I think that some of the points that you made are hurdles for us in this work.
Let me say one last thing on that. So, because this came from the first segment that we did,
Right?
Is, you know, so advanced peace has 6 different components, but that relationship that they build with the mentor is really the main thing. So as we were exploring this to bring this program to Sacramento a couple of years ago, I went down to Richmond.
Okay.
I took a trip down there, and they were doing a presentation. They had some of the NCAs and they had a participant, and they both presented, and the participant presented. And he was doing real good. He was working, but he was telling his story. And it was a small group of us that was there, and we were asking some questions. And so they asked him, they said, well, what's your turnaround point? So he told the story, and he said, you know, I just got out of, this him speaking, about 22-year-old, buff dude, you know, I can't remember his name, but he said, I got out of jail, and I had come up with a plan. I came up with a gambling scheme.
Wow.
So while I was locked up, I was putting this plan together. It was going to be all legit. And I'm coming with a gambling scheme. So it come out, they refer me to the program. I'm like, yeah, that's cool, but I got my plan. So he tells the story, he put his plan to effect, And he didn't say exactly what happened, but it came crashing down.
Right.
And everything he had put into place was crashing. So he said, you know, people's calling me, people looking for me. So it's about 2 o'clock in the morning. He calls his mentor, his NCA. He says, man, I tried to do it legit. It's not working. I appreciate you reaching out, but I'm about to get back to what I know.
Right.
Which is jacking, because that's what I do. And so his mentor says, man, just where you at? He said, just hold on, I'll be right there. 2 o'clock in the morning. Picks him up. They go have breakfast. And he said, this was the moment that did it for me, because this dude got out of his bed with his wife and his warm bed and came and got me, because I was having a little pissy fit.
Right.
But he came here at 2 o'clock in the morning to listen to me get stuff off my chest. And he said, I realized my own family wouldn't have done that.
And he really felt like he had someone who cared about him.
Yeah, exactly. That was the word that stuck with me, family.
Exactly.
He said, I realized my own family. So he said, it told me that this dude saw the mentor, his family. And then he went on to explain, and I'll end with this. He said, when they asked him what keeps you, he said, I don't want to let him down. I don't want to let my mentor down. And every time I think about doing something, I think about letting him down. So it's the relationship, once again.
Definitely the relationship. That is the secret sauce. We get it.
Yeah.
And that's the most important thing, that we get it, and the population that we serve get it. I want to thank you for coming out today, brother. Appreciate you. Jazakallah khair. May Allah reward you for your time spent and for your efforts in this work.
Likewise.
I'm going to close out with Asr. Wal Asr, Inna al-insana lafi khusr, illa alladhina amanu wa amilu salihati, wa tawasaw bil haqq, wa tawasaw bis sabr. And as I promised you, I'm going to do better on giving you the English translation. So Wal Asr translates into, by the token of time, through the ages, verily man is in loss, except such as those who have joined together in the mutual teachings of truth, patience, and constancy. Again, I'd like to thank you again, my brother, Khalid Mutaki from the Office of Violence Prevention, for coming out. Join us here at Masjid As-Sabur every Friday for Juma services. Bring your family, bring your wives and your children. The first Adhan is called at 1 p.m. and the prayer actually starts, the khutbah actually starts at 1:30 p.m. Thank you again for joining us here at Islamic Learning with Masjid As-Sabur. I'm your host, Ahmad Hassan Ibn Julius Thibodeau. Thank you. Assalamu alaikum.